Oh my God, QE has already been happening. Quantitative easing or money printing from the Federal Reserve or US Treasury has already been happening. Are markets set to rocket? People are saying, what are you talking about, Pablo? The Federal Reserve is still doing QT. And in fact, Jerome Powell just said he's going to do QT for another few weeks, or even a few months. What are you talking about? I'm telling you, QE, stealth QE, like under the desk, under the covers, has already started. It started because of a special situation between Trump and the Democrats. It's a very special move they're doing with it in the Treasury, and it's going to be something like $800 billion, like almost $1 trillion is going to hit the markets in the next 2 to 3, 4 months. It's what we call stealth QE. Can it launch altcoin season? Let me show you on the charts what happened the last 2 times when something like that happened. And yes, it is possible. First, let's have a look at the weekly close, because right now it's Monday in Australasian time zone. So basically, let's have a look at Bitcoin. We're still in this consolidation zone going sideways and keeps on bouncing off this green line, which is we're linking these 2 highs. And this could be a double head. If we have to be technical, it could be a shoulder, head, double head, shoulder, and then go down. That could still happen, like 80K, 75K. Technically, it still could happen. I'm more leaning towards it to bounce up because I think QE is just happening with the federal government right now. I think it's going to be quantitative easing and we get some sort of positive upward movement. Okay, Ethereum, obviously, we're getting close to the close as well in a few hours. And obviously, doesn't quite look good because this is the massive trend line. We close below it. And once again, we're about to close below that. And this is the long wick to the top. For 2 weeks now, we can't close above this key 2740s area. So again, Ethereum looking weak. But I'm going to talk about this QE situation and how it's going to help for cryptos to pump. QE is basically defined as when the Federal Reserve is buying bonds from the market. Right now, they're doing the opposite. They're doing QT, which they're selling bonds. When they're buying bonds, they basically take bonds, pieces of paper, worth nothing, like pieces of paper from the banks, and they give billions to the banks. So the banks have the liquidity. That's a liquidity injection into the economy, into the financial system, and the stock market booms. When the stock market goes up, Bitcoin tends to follow it up, or they roughly go up at the same time. Now, what is happening right now is not the Federal Reserve doing QE. They're still doing QT of $55 billion per month. But the federal government, the US Treasury, has already started doing QE. The reason why is this. Now, the federal US Treasury is allowed to borrow money from the market. And in fact, they borrow a lot of money every year, something like $1.8 trillion just last year. The US Treasury general account. That's how much money the United States Treasury has got. So when they sell bonds, and the Federal Reserve this was during COVID. So they sold a lot of bonds to borrow money, and the Federal Reserve gave them printed money and bought their bonds. So suddenly they have a lot of money. It's actually $1.77 trillion. And then once they started spending that, they stopped borrowing and they spent that into the economy. And what happens, right? Here again, they have almost $950 billion and they spend that. Here's them borrowing that money and then they spend that money. Here's them borrowing that money and they spend that money. It's kind of like, think of it as the US government's bank account. That's actually exactly what it is. They borrow like $1.8 trillion, money that they don't have, and they spend it. They give it to the top items are US military spending and entitlements, endowments, veteran, repaying back the interest on all that debt. So anyways, however they spend it, that money finds its way back into the economy, back into the financial system, and people spend that, or people invest that in stocks, or they buy some Bitcoin with it, and markets go up. They almost always do. It's a huge cash injection into the economy. So why is Trump doing that? Well, Trump doesn't have a choice because do you remember something called the debt ceiling? Well, the debt ceiling, what happened during Biden's time is that right now, as of this minute, about 5 days ago, that debt ceiling is binding now. It holds. You cannot lift it anymore unless they come to agreement. Just cannot be lifted. If it cannot be lifted and it's already being hit, 36 trillion, then that means Trump and his U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, cannot issue any more bonds, cannot sell any more bonds. Treasury bonds are essentially IOUs. It's basically a piece of paper saying, I owe you $1 billion. I give you this piece of paper. You, whether you're a bank or insurance company, you're China or Japan, give me $1 billion. I'm borrowing $1 billion from you, and I'm giving you a piece of IOU called US Treasury bonds. They can't do that anymore. The reason why they can't do that anymore is because Biden's during his term, he set a 2-year limit, and he can borrow as much as he can during those 2 years. And that's why US debt ballooned from like 28 trillion to 36 trillion during Biden's 4 years. But now Trump can't borrow anymore because that time limit has been hit unless he comes to a deal. And because Trump and Elon Musk doing his whole Doge thing, cutting lots of costs in the US government, has basically pissed off a lot of people. So a lot of those Democrats are not working with them. So that debt limit is not getting lifted. I know if it sounds confusing to you, I'll show you on the chart. They borrow that money, then they spend that money. Now they borrow that money, and I just told you guys they cannot borrow anymore. They legally cannot borrow anymore unless they get the Democrats to agree with them. Yeah, obviously the Democrats really hate Trump and Elon for doing that whole Doge thing right now, which is Department of Government Efficiency, which means a lot of these US government departments have been cut and they're about to cut taxes. Anyways, the Democrats don't like that. They're not happy about it, so I don't think they're going to make a deal anytime soon. That means Trump is stuck with this spending limit and he has to draw down on it. So when he has to draw down on it, then that means we're going to go through another instance of this chart coming down. So now let's have a look at what happens when this chart comes down. How does that impact Bitcoin and the stock market? First of all, let's have a look at stocks. This is the SP 500. We can see when this number started coming down between July 2020 to December 2021, stock market basically just went right up. In fact, when this bottom and started coming up, that's when the stock market topped and went to bear market, right? Now, the second time is when B500, when this number came down, the US government bank account started spend all their money. That's when, see, the red line is the spider or the SP 500 ETF. And it basically did a double bottom here. So this first bottom was around 365 on the SPY, on the SPY. And here was 359, 360. That's called 358.59. Double bottom. And the bear market bottomed. That was created the bear market bottom, and it bounced. And by the time US government stopped spending in June 2023, the market was at 434. So it was out of the bear market. Now, once again, we have this situation where they're going to start spending again. It has to go down because they can't borrow anymore. That's kind of like QE, because this was $1.7 trillion. This time was $940 billion, and now it's $830 billion. So that's still a lot of money. So this SP 500 or Spider ETF could still come down a little bit, but in general, I'm expecting it to trend up within the next 3 or 4 months, blow off top perhaps. Now let's have a look at Bitcoin. This is July 2020. US government starts spending its money, so its bank account starts coming down, and we get to around, say, May 2021, which is 10 months later, and we see Bitcoin just takes off, and it does a topping process. And of course, this crash happened from 64K down to 28K, and that was something like China bans Bitcoin mining, and then US government keeps on spending, and it rescues Bitcoin from 28K and bounces all the way up to 69K, and that's when the market tops. And look at this. When the US government stops spending and starts collecting money again, taking in money again from the economy, Bitcoin tops at 69K, kind of almost at the same time. So did the stock market top around November, December 2021, and it went to a bear market. And then next time, US government started spending again, almost immediately, Bitcoin starts to form a bottom. This was around 19K. Yes, I understand the eventual bottom came with this final capitulation drop to 15K, 16K here. But that drop was the lunar crash that took it down the final stretch. It was around, but it basically spent this whole time between 19K to 15K in that narrow 4K range. And then the US government kept on spending. And by the time they finished spending, Bitcoin had already gotten up 30.5K, so it doubled from the bottom. So these are all very, very bullish and positive periods. So right now, we know Trump can't borrow any more. He can't take in any more money. He can't do that because there's a debt limit, because the Democrats really dislike him and Elon right now. So that blue line, unless a miracle happens, has to go down. And we saw each time when this blue line goes down, stock market pumps and Bitcoin pumps. Blue line goes down, stock market pumps, Bitcoin pumps. It's not as simple as Bitcoin should go straight up. We can still have a dip maybe down to 90K, 89K, 88K, scare the hell out of everyone, and then go up or something. It's not going to be easy straight up. It's that type of situation. And it's actually a very sneaky thing the government is doing to support the market, whether it's intentional or unintentional. And in general, it's very positive on the market. So if you combine this with my last episode, which I spoke about when that alt season would come, it gives us a good basis of thinking where the market could be. You can never be 100%, but I do say I am leaning towards another leg up. We could get a pullback, probably not a huge pullback, but some sort of small pullback, and then with another leg up because of this situation, and also because the Fed could be forced into stopping quantitative tightening. Okay, thank you guys for tuning in with me. I'll catch you guys next episode.